Hello friends, welcome. Friends, yesterday the Department of Telecommunication came out with this list of pre-qualified bidders. Now friends who are following the Indian spectrum auctions, they probably will know that auctions are going to be held soon, next month after the end of the election, and for that already a lot of preparation has been made. Now this is the process, right, which we have to undertake in order to go through the auction process, and therefore the DOT has laid out the list of pre-qualified bidders. Now in this list you will notice that 3 different companies have been named out as the qualifier who are eligible to bid, and they have been seen as submitted certain amount of EMDs, and corresponding certain eligibility points have been mapped out and given to these bidders so that they can bid in the auction. Now friends, to a layman this will be very difficult to understand what this EMD means and what this eligibility point means, and that is what I am trying to explain to you in this video, that what purpose it accomplishes in the auction process, means how it empowers the auction to go through, and what is the flexibility that it gives to the operators to bid in the auction, right? Before I take you through the details, let's understand on a very high level the concept, and for that I will take you through an analogy and try to give an example of a casino. When you're going to a casino, what you're doing, you are going to the counter first, and then you are submitting certain money, and let's call that as earnest money, and then once you submit a certain amount of money, you are assigned certain tokens, right, by the counter, which is eligibility points, and that token you take to the table for you to make your bids or whatever game that you're playing in the casino. So the amount of bids that you can make or amount of your empowerment to play that game depends upon the total points that you have been assigned at the beginning itself, and that is linked to the value that you paid in the counter, which is the EMD value. Now friends, this may not be an idealistic analogy, but it kind of gives you an idea, right, what is going on. So what this number is now, this number is, this EMD value is telling the DOT and the auctioner that how much a party or a company is intending to bid in the auction. Means how much intensity is, or what is the interest that it has to bid in the auction, means what is the depth and horizontal spread that it is going to undertake in the bidding, and that is going to be restricted by this value. Now if you want to bid in all bands, in all circles, and you want to take the full spectrum that has been offered, then you have to submit an EMD value which is going to be pretty high, and that number will get calculated in the following manner, which I am going to explain to you. Okay, so let's go to the NIA document. Now in the notice inviting application document, which has been submitted long back, and if you go to the page number 107 of 158, you will notice that there is an annexure which is a part of section 12, and this annexure has got tables listing out information for various spectrum bands. For example, table 1A lists out the information of 800 MHz, table A2 will list out the information of 900 MHz. Now you will notice that in this table, the information that has been listed out is the amount of spectrum which is offered for sale, right, across various bands, the total number of blocks that are being offered for sale, which translates with by dividing this number 10 MHz by 1.25. 1.25 is the minimum granularity of bidding. In the 800 MHz band, you can't bid less than 1.25. That's why this number of blocks have been listed out here. And then the reserve price per megahertz and the reserve price per block. This number has also been listed out for each and every circle, which is the minimum bid to start with. And as the auction process goes on, these numbers, the reserve price can increase depending upon the demand in that particular circle for spectrum. Okay. And then corresponding, you will notice that there is 2 columns which are on the right hand side, which is an EMD per block, which is in rupees crore, and eligibility point per block, which is in numbers. Now friends, here you have to notice a very important fact. The fact is that you will notice that the reserve price are different across different circles. They are not same. But the EMD numbers are same of bands which are or circles which are similar in nature. For example, Andhra Pradesh, Delhi, Gujarat has got similar EMD numbers. Earnest value numbers are similar, as well as the eligibility points which are mapped across these EMD numbers. Can you see this here? For example, in Andhra Pradesh, the reserve price is 292 crores per megahertz, but the EMD is 39 crores per block, and the eligibility point is 250 numbers per block. Now the question that you have to ask, and everybody can ask this question, very simple question, that why there is a same EMD numbers for circles with different reserve price, and the number of eligibility points associated with them is also same for those circles which are of different reserve price. This is because of a very important factor. Now in spectrum auction, you have to, because this is a simultaneous spectrum auction happening across different bands and different circles, every circle and every band has got different value attached to it. For example, 800 megahertz value of 800 megahertz will be different from, let's say, 1800 megahertz or 2100 megahertz, because 800 megahertz band has got a better propagation characteristics. Now within that band, you will have certain circles which are of different value, means higher value. For example, Delhi will actually attach a higher value. Andhra Pradesh will attach a higher value, right? Similarly, if you look at Gujarat, it will attach a different value. But there are certain circles like Northeast will attach a lower value. So you can categorize different circles and different bands depending upon the value that those circles will get attached to, depending upon the revenue generation capability of those circles associated with it. So two things. One is bands have different value attached to it, because some bands are of higher value because of their propagation capability. Our ability to deploy networks are much more empowered. For example, 800 megahertz penetrate indoors, so these bands are of higher value, and there are certain circles which are of higher value. Now, in order to ensure that the auction process becomes efficient, you have to bundle some circles and some bands in a certain category in order to ensure that category forms a market. Means you can define because there are different bands, there are different circles. Now these bands and different circles are distinct in nature, but within that circles there are circles which are similar in nature. Within the band there are bands which are similar in nature. Now you can, by going through by making these eligibility points and earnest money, create baskets of bands and circles which are similar in nature, which can define a certain category of market. Because for a market to discover its prices, it has to be categorized as baskets, and within that basket you have to enable free movement. Right? If you don't enable free movement of the bidders within that basket, then what will happen? The price will not get discovered. So, because these are different in nature in value, bands are of different nature in value, the circles are of different nature in value, and within two different bands there could be some circles which will be similar in nature. So in order for them to get aggregated together at one single basket, there will be multiple such baskets. Basket A will fall in a higher value category, some basket B will fall in a different value of category, but within that basket you should have the capability to move around. Because if you don't move around within the basket, let's say for example in Andhra Pradesh, if you are bidding in Andhra Pradesh, and let's say if somebody outbids you in Andhra Pradesh and you want to move in Delhi, if the points across these two circles are not same, and if Delhi is much higher and you have only 250 points here, let's say in Andhra Pradesh, and Delhi if it was 350 points, then you will not be able to make that switch. Do you understand now why these circles actually have been mapped to the similar points? So that gives the ability to the bidder to move seamlessly across bands and circles of similar value, or they can be categorized of similar market. So there could be similar baskets of market A, market 2, market 3, market 4. So this will be higher market value, this will be the second market will be lower market value, like that. The market values will on a decreasing nature as you go from one direction to the other. So what happens is that if you are having points which are of sufficient nature and you have the ability to bid in all the circles of a market which is of category A, then your ability to move within that particular circle and move to a market which is of a lower value is much more flexible. You have the capability, because if you have got, let's say, 2000 points here, and let's say if you are bidding in, let's say, 8 circles or 2 bands, and then if you are going to a lower category of a market which has got, let's say, 16 circles of, let's say, 4 bands, then you can make the shift because those circles, so like for example Bihar will have 75 points, right, per block for you to bid. So you can very easily shift from Andhra Pradesh to Bihar, right, going forward if you really wish to. So the propagation below the stream is very easy, and within the stream also it is going to be empowered, because those are going to have similar eligibility points allocation requirements. Right, so do you understand this point, which is very important? Because there are different bands. So let me summarize. There are different bands in this auction, and there are different circles mapped to different bands. Every band has got different value, and the circles within that band also has got different value. It could happen that within a band there are circles which are similar in nature. It could also happen across bands there will be circles which are also similar in nature. In order to bundle those circles together so as to create a market, so that market can be seamlessly bidded upon by the bidder during the auction, so that the true market discovery can happen, you need to have eligibility points for those circles and for those bands assigned in a similar nature, because these points empower the bidder to bid in that particular circle. Higher the number of points that you have for a particular circle, then your requirement to bid in that circle will be only possible if you have in your basket so many points to start with, right? So that's as simple as that. I don't think that any further explanation is required. You probably have understood. Now just let me go to this particular chart, which is the list of pre-qualified bidders. So you will notice that Bharti has been assigned a total number of points of 7,613, depending upon their EMD value of 1,050 crores which they have submitted. So this has been mapped to these eligibility points. So ultimately he is not bidding with the EMD value. He is only he will be bidding with the eligibility points that has been assigned to it. Similarly, Vodafone has got 2,200 and Reliance has the maximum, which basically means when you are starting the auction process at that particular point in the initial round itself, if you bid 21,363 points, then only you will be allowed to carry forward these points in the next round of the bidding. And let me explain, this concept is also pretty important. Now, before I take you through this concept, I would like to show you that what is the theoretical number of points which is possible for a bidder to submit in the initial round itself before the start of the auction. So I have made the calculation here. If you see here, this number comes out to be 44,771. And how did I do the calculation? I have taken the values in the document and then just multiplied with the number of blocks in offer, added up, and this comes out to be 44,771. Which means that if you look at what Reliance has done, Reliance has made a submission of how much point they have got? They have got 21,363 versus the total number of points which are required to bid in all circles in all bands with full flexibility is 44,771, which means Reliance can start their bid in the first round itself at a lower quantum. He cannot bid for the full bands and for all the circles because he has got less than half this number. Okay, so that is a very important point. The second important point is that in the way the auction is designed, you are not supposed to bid your full points in the initial round of the auction itself. Typically what happens is the activity factor, which determines that how much point that you should bid in the auction is determined by the activity factor, which is typically set as 80% in the beginning of the auction. So which means that let's assume that you have got 2000 points to start with. I'm just giving an example. Then the total number of points that you can put in your pocket means you have to bid. You have got 2000 points, right? Now, because the activity requirement is what? 80%. So you multiply this by 0.8. So what happens is that you can only bid 1600 points in the first round itself and still will be able to retain the 2000 points. You got it? Because of the activity requirement of 0.8. Similarly, as the activity requirement increases and it becomes 0.9, your ability to bid and retain the 2000 point will determine by the fact that how much you are bidding in the next round. For example, if the activity requirement has been set as 0.9, then you have to bid 1800 points to retain the 2000 points. As soon as the activity requirement is set to 100%, then you have to bid the full 2000 point to start with, right? So that is what is the requirement. Now let's assume that you are not bidding 2000 points. Let's say if you have basically submitted EMD value which has resulted in a submission of or an aggregation of allocation of 2000 points to you, and you decide to bid only 1000 points to start with in the auction process, and the activity factor has been set as 80%. So what does it mean? It means that your ability to bid in the next round, if you really want to bid, will determine by this number 1000 divided by 0.8. So whatever that number is, that is the total number of points that you will have in your pocket, which is going to be more than the 1000 points that you have submitted in the bid. However, you will lose the remaining points. So what is the point that you are going to lose? That will be 1000 divided by 0.8, which is 1250, and 2000 minus 1250 will be 750 points. You will lose that. You will never be able to bid in the next round of the auction. That is why these eligibility points does not mean anything if the auction is not competitive. You may submit whatever amount of eligibility point. I could submit the full EMD and get the full eligibility point of 44,771, but it does not mean anything if I only decide to bid fraction of this in the beginning of the auction. Now you got the point, got the concept, right? That is why these numbers, whatever has been submitted here or by the bidders, in the current scheme of things, the way the auctions are run, actually do not mean anything. Because the auctions in India has become highly uncompetitive. You put out everything gets sold in reserve price, and therefore there is no opportunity to even make a switch between one circle to another circle, because you get stuck in the beginning itself. Let's say if I decide to bid in Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra Pradesh got 10 megahertz, and I decide to bid only 1.25 megahertz, and nobody is interested in Andhra Pradesh in 800 megahertz band, I will get stuck forever in Andhra Pradesh. I will never be able to get out of Andhra Pradesh to even make a switch to a different circle like Delhi. So all these designs of auction, the way these eligibility points and the EMD values, everything has been designed, is only going to make sense if the auction is being held in a competitive manner. Means the demand supply equation is matching, there is a demand for spectrum in the auction, the number of bidders are large, and they really want spectrum, then only the auction makes sense. Otherwise it makes no sense to talk about this concept, which is only theoretical in nature. Now, just to give you a little bit more deeper understanding so that you understand, so what I've done is that I have created these charts. Now, these charts are going to give you an understanding as to how these points are grouped together across circles and across bands. So you will get a very good amount of idea. So what I have done is that this is, if you look at this table, this table is a table across all auctions starting from 2010. Means I can make a selection here, I can choose an auction here, and the table will get displayed. And what is this table talking about? This table is giving me a correlation of EMD correlation of EMD, eligibility points, reserve price per megahertz across telecom circles of various across telecom circles in various auction years. Okay, so let me explain to you before you understand this table, because this table is very crucial, and whatever I have spoken before till now will become extremely clear, and you will see how it actually happened in earlier rounds of auctions as well. Now, just to start with, the top row, the row that you see in the beginning part of this table, is the eligibility points per megahertz, like 200, 100, 80, 60, 50, 48, 40, 25, 20, 16, 10, 8, 5. All these are eligibility point per megahertz. This is the points which are decided by the auctioneer. Now, every eligibility points you will see have got two groups of EMD per megahertz, which basically tells us from the beginning part of the concept itself is that if you have an EMD submission per megahertz of a certain value across different circles of a similar band, as well as for bands which are of dissimilar in nature, it could be a situation you will find that different EMD values will get anchored to a single eligibility point metric. So you see 200 points per megahertz is getting anchored to two different EMD per megahertz, 31.2 crores per megahertz and 45 crores per megahertz. Similarly, 100 crores is getting mapped to 15 crores per megahertz and 20 crores 80 points per megahertz getting mapped to 13.6 and 20 crores per megahertz. Similarly, 50 points getting mapped to 7.5, 10 crores per megahertz, right? These are EMD numbers per megahertz. What does it tell? It tells that what the concept which I explained to you, that you could have bands and the circles which are similar in nature, circles which are similar in nature across different bands. For example, if you see here, you have got 2100 megahertz band, 900 megahertz band, 1800 megahertz band, AP. For all these three bands, AP circles is similar in nature, because they are reserve price, though they are different, but the auctioneer the DOT considers these bands, these circles across these bands are similar in nature, and therefore they have assigned an eligibility point of 100 points per megahertz for this circle. So you would be able to switch between these circles, these bands across the same circles without any loss of flexibility, because you need only 100 points per megahertz to make that switch, right? Similarly, if you want to switch between AP and Delhi in 2100 megahertz band, then you can do so very easily, because you need only 100 points per megahertz in order to make the switch, though the reserve price for Delhi for 2100 megahertz is remarkably different from that AP, right? You see, AP is 142 crores per megahertz and Delhi is 51 crores per megahertz. Similarly, Gujarat also is been the reserve price is 140 crores per megahertz, but the eligibility point that is required is only 100 points per megahertz. So what basically it is doing? It is basically grouping the various bands and circles within these bands, right, and anchoring it to a particular eligibility points, right, per megahertz. Similarly, 200, 100. So these are all grouped together. So these are various markets. So this is market 1, this is market 2, this is market 3, this is market 4, this is market 5, like that. So you can't move from the bottom to the top market. It will become difficult, because what you have to do is that you have to aggregate large number of points. Let me give you an example. Let's say if you want to move from from AP, right, and you want to bid in, let's say, Gujarat, right, during the auction process, and how much point you need? 200 points per megahertz you need, and here you have how much points you have been assigned, right? 25 points per megahertz. So what you have to do is that you have to aggregate a lot of circles together in order to create 200 points per megahertz to enable you to switch, which means theoretically or practically, let's say if you are bidding in all these circles which are just marked here, right, as I'm marking here, and you are bidding in all these circles and all these bands, you have to exit all these bands simultaneously in order to make that switch. However, if you are moving from Gujarat to these circles, then you don't have to, because what will happen, because you need only 200 points per megahertz, and let's say if you are not happy with Gujarat, somebody outbids you, and you want to take a different circle in a different band. Let's say if you want to switch to AP in 2300 megahertz band, you have got how much? 200 points per megahertz in Gujarat, because you have bid in Gujarat and you are retaining that point. You simply switch here, and rest of the 175 points, if you don't bid in other circles, you will lose out in the auction process if the activity factor has been set as 100%. So I hope that it makes a lot of sense. This is the whole idea about the auction design, and this auction design idea only works provided the auction is being done in a competitive fashion. Means there is a need to switch, there is a practical possibility or requirement to switch, or actually not requirement. If there are people who are outbidding each other, then only you can switch. Now, if the bidders are getting outbidded, if you don't get stuck in, let me give you an example. In Andhra Pradesh, there are 10 megahertz of spectrum in 800 megahertz band, and you bid for 1.25 megahertz, and nobody is interested in Andhra Pradesh. Then what will happen? You will bid it for 1.25 megahertz in Andhra Pradesh, and you'll get stuck forever. You will never be able to exit Andhra Pradesh until and unless somebody outbids you, means it bids full 10 megahertz and it knocks you out of Andhra Pradesh. So in the auction that currently we are undertaking in India, these kind of auction rules makes actually virtually no sense. These are all theoretical concepts, because that is what the auctions in India virtually have got translated into. It's a very unfortunate situation. So all these things that you see, eligibility points, so much amount of complexity in the auction is not required. It is an administrative assignment, because everything will get sold at reserve price. You got so much amount of spectrum put on the table, nobody needs any spectrum, and over 3 bidders, and they have basically announced certain eligibility points or earnest money deposit, but just for the sake of it, they don't need the spectrum. Then what will happen? First of all, they will not bid. They will start with the lowest number of points, right? And they will lose out all the points in the beginning itself. And then even if they bid in the first round, they will get stuck and they will never be able to get out of the bidding process, because nobody will outbid them in the auction, because everybody will get stuck everywhere and they will not be able to cut out, because the competitiveness of this auction is zero, right? That is the problem with our auction design, and their auction design does not require all this complexity. These are all theoretical concepts. It has basically got translated into theory, right? Practically, it is an administrative assignment. Okay, so I hope that you have understood this concept, and you probably will now be able to appreciate this concept better. And this is actually a recipe for us. Actually, it is a reference for us to people who know these concepts will understand that how futile this whole exercise is, right? Unless and until you do something to enhance the competitiveness of spectrum auction, which is the fundamental thing that which you should be executing. Nobody is focused on that. They are going into details and doing things which are completely unnecessary. Okay, thank you for your time, friends, and I will come to see you in the next video and next time with a new topic. Thank you very much for listening.